Hi, everyone. Welcome back and Happy New Year. I can't believe it's 2024. My name is Robin Runge, and I am the chair of the Civil Rights and Social Justice section at the American Bar Association this year. And as you know, as a part of my year, we have been continuing our chair chats and really taking the opportunity to talk to some of the most inspirational people. And if you know women, if you know me, I tend to pick women because I feel like we don't elevate women and women of color enough in our profession. So I am thrilled today to continue that work as we kick off the new year with Verna Williams. And I'm going to share a little bit about Verna. I have most recently gotten to know her in her role at Equal Justice Works. She's the CEO of Equal Justice Works, and she'll talk about what that is. But I'll do a little commercial. I am a fellow alum and owe my career to that program. And so I'm thrilled that Verna has taken the helm and really brought amazing vision to that space. Many of you probably actually know Verna because she is such a wonderful leader in academia and the legal profession more broadly. As I said, she recently, I think it's just been over a year, Verna, that you've been at Equal Justice Works as CEO. And before that, you were the dean of the University of Cincinnati College of Law, where you'd been a professor there for several years before that, and you taught family law, gender discrimination, and constitutional law. And you founded and co-directed the Judge Nathaniel Jones Center for Race, Gender, and Social Justice there, which I'd love to have you talk a little bit about. And before that, you were at the National Women's Law Center, which is a place that is near and dear to my heart, and did amazing litigation on gender equity and education. And you also worked as a law clerk at the U.S. District for the District of Massachusetts and practiced at Sidley and Austin and the DOJ for a while. So you really, your experience is incredibly diverse and really breaks some of the stereotypes, right? About, I think people think when they come out of law school, you're going to do one path, right? And only one path. And I think it's so important for us to have models like you. So I'm not going to read the rest of your bio, and we're going to make it available when we circulate information about today's webinar, because I really want us to spend our time hearing from you. So I'd love first, again, thank you, Verna, for your time today. I know you're extremely busy, but I'd love to start with hearing a little bit about your navigation, right, from, say, the private sector and then to the National Women's Law Center, and then from there to academia, which is not a path I think a lot of people think about when they think about public interest lawyering. So anything you want to share about that, we would benefit from.
Well, thank you so much, Robin. It's really a pleasure to be here with you today. Thanks for inviting me. And I feel already like I can't live up to the hype, but I will do my best. So yeah, I've done a lot of things. You're right. I think, part of it is an illustration of just how long I've been out of law school. Um, I've been, the journey for me has been one that's, partially planned, but not really. I was never one who had like a 5-year plan about where I wanted to end up. In fact, anytime someone, would ask me that question, it would be kind of difficult to answer. I didn't even know I wanted to go to law school, to go even further back. So, yeah, I clerked, which was a wonderful experience with David Nelson in the District Court of Massachusetts, and went from there to be an associate at Sidley. And I went there largely because of the people and the opportunity I saw to be a litigator. I thought for sure I wanted to be a trial litigator. Long story short, I happened to this as a testament to what it means to actually be in an office back in the before days. I remember going to get coffee one day, and I'm walking across the hall and I see a partner, and he says, George Jones, sadly, he just recently passed away. He says, I just got a call from the NAACP in Florida, and they're looking to file an amicus brief in the U.S. Supreme Court in a case that's challenging the FCC's use of affirmative action. And at the time, the practice area I was in was dealt with the FCC, and I had a long interest in, racial issues. And so he's asking me, "Do you want to work on that?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course."
Yeah, and
Um,
that's how it happens, right? Yeah,
exactly how it happened. That's
yeah,
exactly
yeah.
how it happened. So I got an opportunity to work on a U.S. Supreme Court brief, amicus brief. And there were two cases. They were companion cases. So I worked on the first one, and then George, for whatever reason, wasn't able to take the lead, and he let me take the lead on writing the second one. So I can imagine the experience.
Oh
Um,
my gosh. And I bet there are some people who are familiar with our recent Supreme Court case, right, involving affirmative action, but have no idea, right, of the longevity of those issues. And so
Yeah,
it's
well,
really
we didn't, yeah, I
helpful.
mean, it was sort of the beginning of chipping away at the availability of
Yeah,
affirmative action, way
yeah.
back in the 90s. But I was so gratified to be able to have that experience, to work on something I really cared a lot about. And to use the experience I was getting
Yeah.
to work on something that had even greater meaning for me. I also got the opportunity to work on, there was a big class action lawsuit involving iron workers, and I helped one of the claimants get a very lovely settlement. And I was very happy about that. I mention these things because, these were opportunities to do the kind of work that I felt like I was meant to do.
Yeah,
I felt like I was meant to do public interest work, and that even though I was getting a really great experience at Sidley, lots of responsibility. It wasn't what I was meant to do, in my opinion. So after no, I wasn't there very long. I started looking around and heard about an opportunity at the Department of Justice's voting rights section. And so,
mm,
yeah, I got to work on voting rights. While the work was really interesting, and it just was not a good fit for me.
mm-hmm,
I was only in justice for a couple of years, and that's how I landed at the National Women's Law Center. And
mm-hmm.
when I got there, I felt like I was home. I mean, it was, what was really terrific about it was I felt like I was able to practice law in a very non-traditional way.
Yeah,
Um, one of the first projects I worked on had to do with the earned income tax credit. We were developing materials to help train people how to take it.
yeah,
Which is, one, I think at that time in my life, I don't think I fully recognized that tax could be a woman's issue.
right. I don't
And
think people
then,
did for a very long time. Did you work with
yeah,
Joan? Yeah.
yeah,
She was a law professor, I mean, a professor of mine in college.
okay,
And so I got to hook up with her again when she was there. And she was one of the people who sat me down and said, tax is a feminist issue. And I was like, okay.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't. And the worst part about it was, I didn't even take tax in law school. Like I had signed up for it as a 3L, and there was a visitor taking it, and he was calling on people. And at that point I was like, oh no, no,
Yeah,
I
I'm on
can't
my
do
way out the
this.
door. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and I just want to
So
lift up something,
yeah, I
Bernie.
know it's
You
embarrassing.
just said
I
though.
shouldn't be sharing that story. That's not a good
Oh,
example
no, it's
set.
fine. But I just want to lift up something you said because I think there's this myth out there for law students that you're supposed to know exactly where you're supposed to land when you graduate. And I
Right.
always find that fascinating. I'm like, how can you possibly know? And
No,
so
there's
I
no
just
way.
want to, yeah, lift up
There's
what you
no way.
just
Thank you for
said.
saying that. I mean, I think, and
Yeah.
that's the other lesson I think of my career. I mean, I thought I wanted to be a litigator. I didn't ended up not wanting to do that. I thought, in fact, trial litigation was the thing for me, but really
Yeah.
appellate litigation was something I enjoyed more.
Oh, that's
Um,
fascinating. Yeah.
it's at my time at the center, I became an expert on Title IX in gender equity in education. I
Yeah.
handled a case that went to the U.S. Supreme Court that established the principle that schools have an obligation under Title IX to address student-on-student sexual harassment. I mean, this is,
Wow.
again, not anything I ever planned or said, by the time I'm whatever I want to be,
Right,
I have a
right.
case in
I
the
always
US
find those
Supreme
things
Court.
bizarre. By the time I'm
Yeah,
30,
it
I'm going
just
to
didn't,
argue
yeah,
before the
it
Supreme
just,
Court. And you're like,
right. Yes, yes. But yeah, and I think that if you ask my law school self, would I be working on women's issues? I wouldn't have thought about that.
yeah,
I thought,
yeah,
I had taken a course in racism and law, and that was really what I wanted to focus on.
yeah.
And I thought, yeah, I don't think gender ever entered into the picture.
It's amazing.
But now, I mean, I see these things as inextricably intertwined.
That's right.
Um,
That's right.
so, so yeah, I mean, I think, okay, and then I'll just the overview, and then I'll give you the big, the big principle,
Yeah.
so the experience at the court, the US Supreme Court, opened my mind to becoming a professor because friends of mine had suggested that I consider it, but I was like,
Uh-huh.
not me. It's so not me. It's
Yeah.
not that I was in the academy for 21 years of my career. So most of my career was spent doing something that I thought was not me.
Yeah.
And
That is
then
so great.
after
Yes.
having, I was the dean, as you say, and now I'm back, I'm sort of full circle having landed at the at Equal Justice Works. And so I say all that to suggest I wanted to go over all of those things and my
Yeah.
mindset. You can see that there wasn't a big plan. There was no like, grand
Exactly.
plan.
People like look at LinkedIn and
Yeah.
it's like I remind them that's propaganda. You know what I mean? Like we
Yeah.
make it look
Yeah.
like that for a reason. And by the
Right. And
way,
I think when I was a clerk and I had applied for a public interest job and I didn't get it, and I thought, that's it, I'll never get to do it. I
right,
mean, all of these things.
all those
It's
things.
just you're
Yeah.
the what I came up with was I modified a statement by Martin Luther King, just sort of thinking about legal careers, and the arc of your career is long, and you can bend it toward justice.
I
So
like that.
don't think that if you didn't get that job once you started, when you started out, it's
Yeah.
not the end of the world. There are
Yeah.
things that you can learn. And all along the way, everything that I did, I guess, yes, that's the other purpose of highlighting the different things that I did on my journey. All of those things are relevant to the work that I do now as the
Yeah.
CEO of Equal Justice Works, because
Yeah.
I've touched
Yeah.
on all the different sectors and all the different stakeholder groups that Equal Justice Works deals with.
Yeah. And I would say what's so great is your pivot toward academia, after your friends kept nudging you, it sounds like, which is awesome, is where you really were able to work on race and gender issues combined in a variety of
Yes,
capacities,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
dynamite.
Yeah, well, it gave me the privilege to stop and think
Yeah.
about the work
Yeah.
and what it is. And in fact, the first article that I wrote was about a problem, that had vexed me all through in practice, which was single sex education. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, long story short, a number of people were saying, "Oh, we got to have it. It's for Black boys. We got to do this." And it
Right.
just didn't sit quite well with me. What is it about, why is this the method? Why is this the thing that people are pursuing?
Right.
And does it really redound to the benefit of African American boys? And what about African American girls? So I had like lots and lots of questions,
Yeah. And then the
and
laws
that's a
rule, right?
great way
The
to
laws
start
rule
a
in that
research
is like
project.
not what you
Yeah,
think it would be, right? Like,
yeah,
again, like trying to be,
yeah,
as a reflection of society, hopefully, or the best of us, right? Or an effort to kind of move us in a direction of civil rights and social justice. The law is really interesting in that space. So your questions are key, right? Wow, that must have been
hmm,
gratifying to be able to focus on that. I think
yes,
people think of VMI, right, as the case that really
yes, yeah, of course,
talk
yeah,
about.
they do.
Yeah.
But I
Mm.
think in a nutshell, in the context, I mean, there's still no research that supports the theory that just separating students on the basis of their sex, that provides some educational benefit.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of rhetoric that taps into stereotyping about students, and indeed, there's been a lot of research that showed that some of the curricula that they came up with were pretty um, stereotypic, but that's not why we're here. Um,
No, but it's really
but
interesting,
that is
right? No,
part
I
of,
mean,
yeah.
and you're an expert, right? I went to Wellesley College, right? So I'm
Oh, okay.
keenly
Yeah.
interested in everything you have to say, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, I mean, and for girls and women, I mean, the people that single sex education is not good for are the people who benefit already in society, typically those who are white, cis,
Yeah,
heterosexual men.
right.
But for the others, there can be some benefit, but it isn't, necessarily educational. But so anyway,
Yeah,
just as an example to show how things that can crop up in your practice can be something that's a research project. I think
yeah,
to that end, you said some people may have an interest in entering academia. I mean, it's not obviously, what I certainly was against the odds, in that by the time I got on the market for teaching, I had been out of law school for, I think, 8 years or so. And some people said, you've been out practicing for a while. And
Yep.
some people
Yep.
think
And there's
you're,
this whole theory you're not supposed to do it. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
you won't
Yeah.
be a
Yeah.
scholar. They doubt that you'll be a scholar. But I think for lots of schools, I mean, first of all, there's 200 law schools in the country.
Yeah.
That theory may be true at the top 14, and even Harvard is hiring people who have practice experience. Um,
Exactly.
but
That's
for
true.
many other schools, it's not the case. They value practice experience. The students certainly value practice experience.
Absolutely.
Um, and for me, it actually it helped advance my research agenda. So it can be done. For those who
And I
are
think,
thinking about it, I would advise them to start working on some um, articles, because
yes, to get
they're looking for
published.
people. Yeah, they're looking for
Yeah.
people. And in the market's quite competitive, and
Yes.
folks are looking at people who have published. And there's a number of folks who come on the market who have JDs and PhDs and the like.
Right. No, yeah. But I think too, the other thing is you being a law professor, when I went to law school, all my professors were white men, right? So it wasn't like just to say it wasn't possible was not, it's like you didn't see anybody, right? Like just
Yeah.
be transparent. I think my third year, I finally um had I had a black man and I had Asian woman and I had two other white men, but that was, and I mean, I'm not 100, but and so to have you as a professor is tremendous because the students see you in that, in themselves and vice versa, right? And I think I think what I've learned is, when I transitioned from being a public interest lawyer into academia was that, like, my students, I've taught at the University of North Dakota School of Law, it's a little different. But my students didn't even know what a public interest lawyer was, right? And so you're
Um,
modeling, right, in all these different ways. And I think that's why, and this is a great segue into your transition to Equal Justice Works. There are a number of alums from the fellowship program who are
yes.
now in academia. And I think that's a tremendous thing and a tremendous legacy of the program. And some of us are teaching, like I went to GW and I teach part-time at GW. And every semester I have students come up to me and say, how did you get that vote? And I am thrilled, right? Like,
Yeah, that's
because
great.
I want them to see, right? Someone who went to their school, who is now, has this career that I'm really proud of personally, and that I owe to that program. And so I just think it's great. And as you said, it ended up being academia, 21 years of your career. So I mean, that's
Yeah.
just and you really, we don't have, I guess, time to get into too much of it, but Verna, I know enough to know that you did really advance some of the theories you have shared with us, but also some really critical work around racial and gender justice, right? With the center that you founded, and and that remains, right? And I think that's just a tremendous gift, right, for all of us. As you said, it becomes work that you can further in a variety of different ways, whether it be through litigation before the Supreme Court, you did that, but now also really furthering how people are thinking, right, about what is possible, what is appropriate, I guess, for lack of a better description, and pushing people to think
Yeah.
differently.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
The center at the at University of Cincinnati, it was like a little idea I had. I mean, one of the reasons I was really attracted to University of Cincinnati is because it was the first law school to have a joint degree program in law and women's studies. And so for me, coming right off of having worked 8 years at the National, or however many years I was at the National Women's Law Center, that was really appealing. And so what I wanted to do was build on the JDMA and have a clinic and a journal. And, I
yeah,
wanted to engage with the community. So even though I was in the academy, I still had my foot in practice. And because for me, anyway, the way I think about things, being connected to practice helped to fuel my research agenda.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, and as you say, I mean, and I was really thrilled to have colleagues there that would, I co-founded it and we co-directed it, and now it's named for a distinguished civil rights jurist. We had the opportunity to, thank him and celebrate him before he passed
Oh,
away. Yeah, with the naming. And so, yeah, that was all really gratifying. It's so great to
Yeah,
see. And it must be the
yeah,
same way for people like my predecessor, David Stern. I mean, he was
yes,
CEO of Equal Justice Works for 30 years. And, Equal Justice Works, for those of you who may not be aware, is the nation's largest facilitator of fellowships, legal fellowships. We get folks into public interest jobs. And the thing that's so remarkable, it was founded by law students. It's been going for almost 40 years. We're coming up in 2 years, we'll be around for 40 years. And in that time, we have over 2,500 alums, including folks like Robin. And yes, they're in the academy, but they're leaders in public interest. You'll find them everywhere. I do mean like everywhere. It's so thrilling, honestly, to see
yeah,
when I say, oh yeah, I'm a CEO of Equal Justice, or it's like, oh, I was a fellow, or oh, I know a fellow, or I mean, it's really quite remarkable. 85% of the folks that go through our fellowship program remain in public interest work. So I really think of Equal Justice Works as having an enormous role to play in building out the public interest law field. We are a
yeah.
player in when it comes to access to justice in really significant ways.
Yeah, I can tell you, just as an example, Verna, when I call myself a baby lawyer, when I was a fellow and a baby lawyer, um, I represented survivors of domestic violence and employment law cases, which was really radical in the late 1990s. It's still kind of radical now, which makes me sad. But more importantly, as I've started to reach out and become members of coalitions, I started out in San Francisco and then I moved back to DC, of people, of other lawyers representing and providing services to survivors of domestic violence. I will never forget, I was in a coalition meeting in DC with 12 lawyers. Every single one of us was either a current fellow or an alum. And so I just need to uplift for you, right? The impact on a
Yeah.
national level that the
Yes.
program had, not just bringing us in and supporting us so we could do that work, but the services single-handedly expanding in that instance civil legal services for survivors. I mean, I literally had a front row seat, and that is still the case, right? Like, and we, the percentage of us who continue in this field and would not have had the opportunity, let's just say it straight out, because there aren't a lot of jobs. I think people don't really understand how incredibly hard it
Yeah.
is to get a job in public interest law
Yeah.
right out of school, especially.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
I know that was me. I wasn't there were no job postings for brand new, like maybe a couple of legal aid organizations, but I didn't want to do that. You know what I mean? Like, I knew enough.
Right. Right.
And who knows, I probably wouldn't have gotten one of those jobs because they were so competitive.
Yeah.
And and so it really has changed the face of legal services, and access to justice. And I think that's why your leadership and your vision, picking up on what you were saying about David as the founder, is really critical at this moment in time. And I'd love to have you share a little bit of that, and in particular the racial justice work that you're
Okay,
doing.
sure. I'm happy to do it. Before I do that, though, the other thing I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the fact that, I mean, we talked about all the people that have gone through the fellowship program and the ways that they've been able to advance in the public interest world. We also have, we collaborate, obviously with host organizations, but the sponsors, the folks that sponsor these fellowships, are folks that are in law firms and corporate legal departments. And many of them are engaging in pro bono work. So if there's anybody on this call that's working in a law firm or corporate legal department and interested in civil rights and looking to help out, I mean, pro bono is a perfect way to get engaged, to meet people, to get into that community. But so that whole the impact of Equal Justice Works is what really attracted me to the position, and particularly at this time when they're just first of all, the need is so great. 92% of legal needs are going unmet in this country.
Yeah,
You can see what's happening in the court in terms of rights that we thought were well settled have been rolled back. Many more are threatened. And so to have the opportunity to contribute in a new way really meant a lot to me.
yeah,
So upon joining Equal Justice Works, the board really embraced my vision and urged me to work with our different stakeholder groups to develop a strategic direction for Equal Justice Works. And so we've been engaged in this process for almost a year. And the process and what we've come up with is a vision that's got 3 pillars that basically is about embracing our values of equity, diversity, and inclusion in meaningful ways. The first way is we want to develop a racial justice program. We already have programs around housing justice, disaster
Mhm.
resilience. So we're developing, these programs really typically develop a cohort of fellows that'll focus on a particular issue, gain expertise, and can go out there in really specialized ways. We want to do something similar to that around equal justice and racial justice. And the area
Mhm.
that has emerged is around economic empowerment. So it's not to say we haven't been doing racial justice, because a lot of the work at Equal Justice Works has been, but there's power in recognizing the need to address the systemic barriers that racism present to too many people. And as part of this, we've begun training folks in anti-racist lawyering. We partnered with Penn State Dickinson Law and their Anti-Racism Development Institute to provide training at the most recent leadership development training, which is where I met Robin. We've done it for student fellows, and we're also doing it internally at Equal Justice Works as part of embracing that value. The second thing that we want to do is to develop a more diverse public interest law field. So we are taking the initial steps at developing a pathway program for folks pre-law to get into public interest law. So
Awesome.
stay tuned. That's in its very nascent stages right now. The other thing we want to do is create another fellowship program for folks who aren't lawyers, for people who are who are legal professionals, think paralegals, legal techs. I think about community organizers, social workers. These folks can provide important help to people in need. And we'd like to play a role in mobilizing them and getting them out into the field as well. And the final pillar is about increasing our research and data analytics capacity. There's a story to be told. There's growing efforts around helping to explain why representation matters to communities. We think that because of the longevity of our program, the fact that we have been in pretty much every state in the country, and just how the impact that we've had, we are well situated once we can gather that data and analyze it to tell the story about
Yeah.
why representation matters. And here I always give the example. You think about evictions. 90% of landlords are represented in eviction proceedings. Quite the opposite when it comes to the
Mhm.
people who are confronting evictions. We know that when people have representation, they have much better outcomes. So that in and of itself, that's a great statistic to lift up. But if people are able to stay in their homes, that has meaning for communities. It
Yes.
means the students if their kids in the family, they're not struggling
Yeah.
because they're able to stay put. They're in a much more
Mhm.
stable environment. It has implications for folks not having to, struggle to find work and so forth. So there are real benefits to representation that need to be lifted up so people can understand why it's important. Indeed, it's important to democracy. If people believe that the system is something that works only for rich people, that engenders disrespect for
Right.
the rule of law. So
Right.
there are all kinds of benefits for representation that need to be lifted up over and over again. And I believe that Equal Justice Works has a role to play in that regard.
Absolutely. And as you point out, is uniquely situated because of the
Yes.
information. Yeah. I mean, again, I'm just in awe of the vision, right? That you can see the opportunities and the unique positioning of the organization. And I know I have already benefited from the partnership on anti-racist lawyering. And I have to say, I know law schools such as the one that you partnered with have figured out that this needs to be a part of the curriculum. That this needs to be a part of the first year. I'll just go out on a limb and say it, mandatory, not optional curriculum. And I know I would have benefited tremendously. And even at this stage of my career, which somebody could try to tell me was too late, but I refuse to believe that because I still can learn and need to. And I'm in spaces where I can try to employ some of the things that I have already benefited from in participating. And so it's just amazing. And how many alums are there now across the thousands, right? I think
I don't have a
4,000
precise
is the
number, but
last
it is
number.
over 2,500. It is over
Holy
2,500.
moly. I
Yeah.
mean, and that reach, right? Like
Yes.
is and I think about that. I think about the reach with
Hmm.
that group, and then every fellowship class coming through from this point forward, having the benefit of that knowledge and expertise. And I think right now we have a lot of young lawyers who want to be anti-racist lawyers, but what does that mean, right? What does that look like?
Hmm.
And so thank you, and I look forward to seeing all of your visions come to fruition. And thank you for all that you've done for all of us as a litigator, right? As an academic, and now in your critical role as CEO. Your leadership is tremendously appreciated in the legal profession, and you are a model for so many of us about reminding ourselves what we can do in a variety of different ways. And supporting Equal Justice Works is just one of them, I have to say. I enjoy coming to the dinner and giving and supporting and making sure that we can get as many fellows out there as possible every year. So thank you, and good luck, and get some rest and take care of yourself. That's quite the agenda.
Oh, thank you, Robin. It's as John Lewis would say, it's good trouble to
Yes,
get into. So yeah,
absolutely.
it's a privilege to do this work, and I'm very lucky. So thank you so much for inviting me to speak to folks today. And if you have any questions, you can find me on the web. You can find me at Equal Justice Works. And, and apropos of Robin's point, there is a donate button on our, our website. If
Yes.
you want to help us get fellows out there, please do.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.